Hey, thank you so much for watching, listening, and of course, thank you for subscribing because we have amazing content. And this series has been a really powerful series. We're wrapping it up today. I'd encourage you to share it with your friends, neighbors, relatives, fellow countrymen, enemies. I think it's a really powerful series because we're talking about what happens when Jesus disappoints, being disappointed with Jesus. You're like, well, that doesn't really happen. Well, actually it does. It happens. And I've done this Jesus dance for over 5 decades. I love Jesus deeply. I mean, to the very core of my soul, very, very fiber in the marrow of my bones. And I can say, I have been disappointed with Jesus. He has not met my expectations in various seasons, experiences. And I have been angry, hurt, disappointed. And I have had my pouting moments. I'm mad at you, Jesus. I'm going to take my toy. I've had all that. I get it. And you're like, wow, how could you be so honest and real and so raw with us? Because that's exactly what we read in John chapter 11 with Martha and Mary and their disappointment with Jesus because Jesus didn't show up in time to heal their brother and their brother Lazarus died. They were hurt, angry, disappointed. Jesus didn't meet their expectations. And they said it to him, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. Both of them said that. So I don't think it's wrong to be disappointed with Jesus. I think it's part of how we grow and connect and deepen our relationship with Jesus is in some of that struggle, that wrestle. Because Jesus doesn't always do what we want or anticipate, expect. In fact, a lot of times Jesus does things in ways we don't expect. Or we have a prayer out there, hey, would you please do X, Y, and Z? And Jesus does instead A, B, and C. And you're like, okay. Not what I thought, but, and I like this because it says it in the Old Testament. God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And I find that whatever God does, Jesus does, same, is far better than what I could anticipate or request. And that's exactly what happened with Lazarus. So we've talked about Martha and Mary, and we talked about the Jewish spectators that came to support Martha and Mary last week, or the last episode. And today I want us to talk, and as we finish this series, about Lazarus. Because at the end of the story, this is who it's all about. It's about Jesus and Lazarus. Martha and Mary are frustrated because that's their brother, and he's dead, and they lost him, and so they're grieving. But the one who actually died is Lazarus. And it's interesting because in this whole chapter, we don't hear anything from Lazarus because he's dead and he's in the tomb. That's what this thing is all about. But Jesus shows up to Lazarus' tomb, and I like what he says. He says, remove the stone. And Martha's like, if you read it in the King James, it's like, Lord, he stinketh. I like Martha. She's always like practical and thinking, oof, you probably don't want to do that because you've got decomposing body and he rotting flesh. It makes you want to hurl right in and out of the gate. Ugh. But, and Jesus says, didn't I tell you that if you would believe, you'd see the glory of God? And so then Jesus, after the stone gets rolled away, I like what Jesus does. He says, lifts up his eyes and he says, Father, I thank you that you always hear me. And I know you always hear me, but for the benefit of everybody around me, so that they will know that you've sent me. And then Jesus, he doesn't go into the tomb. He stays outside with everybody else. And this is what he does. He calls out in a loud voice. In the Greek, he cries, Lazarus, come forth. And this is a dude who had been dead for 4 days, stone cold dead. And it says the dead man, I like it, the dead man hopped out of the tomb with his feet bound, his hands bound, and a cloth around his head. Typical burial preparation. That's what they did. They bound their feet, they bound their hands, and they wound a cloth around their head. And that's what death does to us. Death affects our mobility. Death affects our ability to do something, to be active. And death affects our outlook, our thoughts, our mindset. And Jesus, being the resurrection, says to us, not only Lazarus come forth, but Jesus also says, loose him and let him go. And I would say that if we have held on to disappointment and anger and bitterness, frustration with Jesus, that it's possible we could be walking or bound by death. I've seen this happen. I've seen people be angry, hurt, disappointed with Jesus and not come out of that grave, not breathe the resurrection life, not say yes to Jesus, loosing their feet, unlocking their hands, removing the death mentality, the death perception, the death filter. Jesus wants to help us to live vibrant, effective resurrection life. And I would say to you that maybe it's time to take off the death clothes, to take off the death constrictions, whatever binds you, whatever controls you, whatever limits you, and say yes to Jesus' resurrection. We know he rose from the dead back in the day, from the cross to the tomb, grave, all that, and then rose from the dead. We get it. But it's not only for Jesus to do that for himself, but Jesus says, I am the resurrection. And if Jesus lives in us, we've invited Jesus into our lives and he's a part of our daily living. And that means Jesus' resurrection, he is resurrection, lives in us. So we can live in resurrection. We can hop out of the grave. We can walk out of that annihilated, dark, bleak, empty existence and walk in life, vitality, resurrection with Jesus. And I would say this as well. I believe with all my heart that we can also be agents of resurrection. Not only that we live a resurrected life, but that we facilitate resurrection for other people. Because I have no doubt in my mind, Martha and those Jews who watched Lazarus come hopping out of that tomb, I think they dropped their tea and peed their pants. I thought, oh my God. Because, and so when now Lazarus is living and vibrant and resurrected, wherever he goes, he's evidence of resurrection, of transformation, of life that was dead and now is alive again. Man, that's who Jesus is. That's what Jesus does. And as we walk with him, we can walk in resurrection life as well as be resurrection life for other people. Let resurrection come through us for people around us, our neighbors, our friends, our relatives, our co-workers. That Jesus has resurrection even out of the midst of great discouragement and disappointment. Jesus is our resurrection. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Of course, subscribe, hit the little bell right there, lets you know when we have new content posted. And the last question I'd like you to answer with this series is, what needs resurrection in your life? Think about that. What needs resurrection in your life? And we have an amazing joke. I say loosely. What do lawyers wear to work? What do a lawyer, right? Lawyer is the litigator, prosecutor, defendant, whatever. A lawyer wears a lawsuit to work. So stupid. I know, but next week will be way better. Thanks so much.